upgrades.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are back yet again for another episode of True Detective Night Country. So as you're watching this, this is on the day of. When we're watching it, this is months and months later. So we're going to go and break down this episode too as best we can. Unfortunately, one of our other co-hosts is not able to come again this time, but he will be back the third. But I have back again, Vanessa. What's going on?
Hey, not much. Just slightly terrified, unsettled by this episode. Fun, absolutely fun.
Oh no, I if you heard, I was freaking out too. I was like, I'm doing everything but this.
It was every 10 minutes.
Yeah, no, like for real, especially from the very beginning, because the way they set up the opening for this was, yeah, it creeped me to freak out. So just kind of lay you guys a foundation. Off the last episode, we of course see all the different men that were in the research lab. Their bodies were found by Rose. Now, Rose pointed them out, but Navarro was like, how in the world did this happen? And then, of course, Danvers being Danvers is trying to make sure that everybody is not making the crime scene like a joke. Like all these guys are sitting there playing around, and she's trying to contain what's going on by trying to figure out and identify why they're there, what happened to them. And so all of a sudden, like you hear like a noise, and one of the bodies, like their mouths open up and starts to scream. And I was like, that is the creepiest thing I've seen in a while. And I mean, I don't know, for you, like coming off the last episode, going to this, like what was your take on just going straight into episode 2?
I had a lot of questions, and that's where I was like, I was like, I hope we just dive right in. And I was actually curious about like how they were even like getting them out, which is super, super, super interesting. But also before he even screamed, because she was trying to preserve the crime scene, and so they were just like, dudes were taking selfies. People were just like messing around, like going too fast. One guy came in with a chainsaw or something. And then, so she's like, can you please get it together? We have to preserve the crime scene, whatever. And then the dude snapped the guy's arm off, which is what caused him to scream. So that's the only time we see him this entire episode. And I don't know which one it was. I could not remember. But like, yeah, that was, and when he screamed, I was like, oh my God, that was just, and I assumed that it was just like an involuntary reaction. No. But yeah, right. That was, yeah, just way more questions now. I'm like, how did he survive? Like, how did that even happen? 2 days they were out there, right?
yeah. Well, I guess in theory it's either between 3 or 2 days. It had to have been at least 2 days they were out there,
right?
And I guess the guys in the comatose. I mean, it's weird because I don't know how they took his body away from the rest of them, because I swore it was the bald guy, but I didn't see him there after the fact by the end of the episode. So yeah. I don't really know. So the older guys,
I don't remember either. That's why I was. Yeah, I don't know, and I don't know how. That's the thing. And I remember she was on the phone with Danvers was on the phone with the surgeon, or like, we're about to go into surgery. Like, we gotta go. So we don't. He's sounds like he's losing more limbs. Like, I think all of them had like frostbite on their toes and stuff and fingers. So I'm assuming he's gonna lose a lot more than what we saw.
Right. And I think the reason why it was such a dope transition, the reason why, she was talking while moving is she was trying to go and talk to her. I don't know if this is an ex or a fling. I don't know, but it seems like she was involved with this teacher, and she wanted to get kind of information on what the situation was, as far as what were they researching out there, what were they actually doing, and did he have any insight on it? What was your interpretation of their relationship, and also why do you think he knows as much as he knows? In pertaining to
I think I got like they kind of confirmed it, but I got the assumption that they were like like just the way they talk. He's like, oh my God, can you please stay away from me? Like, it felt like it could have been one of two things. Like, I'm tired of you getting harassed by a cop, but it more felt like we broke up. Leave me alone. I don't want to see you.
Right.
So I thought that was funny that like she's just like, I don't care. Like she does not care what anyone's feelings are. She wants her information and she's gonna get it. And I think he said he was a geologist, so he didn't know. So I genuinely don't know why he knew as much as he did about it, but maybe he was just curious. I guess maybe scientists like run in the same community and they kind of like look, especially since it's a small town and
Right.
he
That's
is a
probably
suffer. He probably wanted to know a little bit more about it. So, and we needed some exposition of like what was going on there, which we get, got some interesting things
yeah.
and or like I guess whatever they're doing there.
Yeah. It's just really interesting because they were talking about what were they talking about? Reanimation of dead tissue or possibly preservation of tissue and regeneration. And I was like, are we gonna get a freaking zombie out of this? Like, it's like what is about to happen here? Because we already won. We know for a fact that the water itself is messed up. Like, matter of fact, there's a scene later on that a fight broke out within the bar because they're like, why are you feeding your children this water? And like, we don't have a choice. And so it's like, it's evident there's something
Mm-hmm.
going on with the water. It's evident that what they were
Mm-hmm.
researching, that it possibly messed up the minds of one of them. Because as we look through the journal, like, um,
Mm-hmm.
towards the back half of the episode, I forgot the guy's name that we know is possibly suspect number one. Um, so many different levels to that statement,
Yeah.
but the fact that he started to lose it mentally, I'm actually wondering if it was an exposure situation, and he was like first
Mm-hmm.
contact exposure. But the thing that you can't explain is that they're all being visited or interacting with supernatural elements some way, shape, or form. Every single one of them. Even down to Rose
Mm-hmm.
having a conversation with Navarro. It's like, yeah, I know he's been dead, but something else is going on. And she kind of gave her a good foundation of what's up, but it just wasn't enough. What did you think about that conversation with Navarro and Rose when they started kind of breaking down the relationship that Rose had with the guy that she saw that was a ghost? But even more than that, kind of what Rose knows. What was your take on some of that?
Yeah, I love that like somehow all the townspeople have a little bit of a connection with each other. I love Rose and Navarro's conversation that Rose is like every very matter of fact about everything. Like, it brought me to you, which is cool. Like I love that, it gives us a little bit more insight into their relationship. I think you've mentioned this in the last episode that something could be in, or maybe it was this one, but something could be in the water. Like that's the one thing that could affect them all. Like maybe they're being haunted, but on a more practical level, it could be something that it did get in the water and is affecting the entire town. So it's not just affecting. They kept saying the bad water in the villages, which is I assume is where most of the indigenous tribes live. Which of course,
Yeah.
bad runoff water, usually even in the United States, almost always affects marginalized communities of color, like because they're living in the poorer areas. So like runoff from chemicals and stuff like that. Well, in this case, it would be like coal mines, and that being affecting like their water more. So I'm wondering if it's possible something got in their water and that it's affecting them all in their, or maybe it's activated Rose's ability to see ghosts or whatever. She said, "How long have you been able to see dead people?" And just like, Travis is the first one, and I was like, what? It's so matter of fact and nonchalant. I was like, okay. So that is fascinating to me because I'm wondering, of course, like a lot of indigenous tribes believe in like a lot more than like our reality. Like there's different planes, there's different realities of spirits and ancestors and stuff like that, and that's a lot of beliefs that go into that. So I'm not surprised Navarro took it in stride because like that's not, I don't think that's surprising. But Rose went around to like the FBI and was like, a ghost pointed me to it. They would be like,
Right.
you're insane. But but I thought that was fun. So that was interesting. I gave us a little insight into both of them.
Yeah, it's interesting because scene right after that, Navarro's kind of like vibing out to like the Barbie. I can't remember what song it was she was listening to.
Spice Girls.
Spice Girls, that's right. And she was kind of vibing out to it and enjoying it. And like she put her hand down and like she was pulling something. and then she was holding it, and then all of a sudden she had this flashback, and it looked like either her mom or her sister were watching somebody getting possessed, or it was her mom being possessed and her sister and her were holding each other. I'm not really sure, but it seemed like on a surface level, like somebody was having like a mental break. But from a spiritual perspective, it looked like somebody was possibly possessed or dealing with something really otherworldly. Because at that point, Navarro took the cross. She noticed what it was, and then she threw it out the window. And they really honed in on that specifically. And even throughout the episode, they kind of she after that initially she had said, I think even the last episode to her boy toy, that she didn't want to put her sister in a situation where she had to take these medications, but that scared her so much that she was willing to go back to her sister and be like, well, maybe you should, like, maybe this is the best thing for you. She's trying to make sense of what's really happening. But what was your take on what's going on with that? Because again, there's so many different supernatural elements that are happening, but there's a case for every single one of them. Like, there's psychological imbalances, there's trauma, there is other things going on that can account for it. But I don't know, man. This is the most supernatural season of True Detective I've ever seen, and it's freaking me out.
Right.
I'm not gonna lie.
No, I agree. I love it though. That's my favorite. This is my favorite type of stuff. I mean, obviously it was like a really strong flashback. And when I first saw it, I was like, is this like she's trying to is she giving birth? But it makes sense. It gives us a little insight because she keeps saying, like, little sister keeps saying, like, I don't want to be like mom, not like mom, not like mom. And I'm wondering if she did, like, it was possession, and maybe she had a mental illness that she thought was, and like she needed an exorcism and refused to go get help, and it became like this whole thing. I'm wondering if that, like, because I know in a lot of especially religious communities growing up, like that's not a thing. Like, mental illness is not a thing. Like, you have the demon inside you, so like they would go to their churches and their pastors to get the bad spirits out, which is not helpful to someone who's possibly schizophrenic or bipolar or whatever. Like, that just exacerbates the mental illness. So I'm wondering if that is something that her sister inherited, and that's something that they're all having to deal with. And maybe Navarro was more sensitive to like stuff like that because she got rid of that necklace quick. So I don't know. I think it's interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, it goes back to also to the statement that she made to what's the name, the brother of the girl that died, when he asked her, like, do you believe in God? It goes right back to that because it's like she said yes, but then she was like, it didn't really matter. And it's very fascinating kind of how they're connecting threads so well from a story narrative standpoint. Even in moments with like Danvers, like, I don't like Danvers as a character, but they are writing her very well. Like, they're writing her so well that times you love to hate her, then other times you're like, man, she's just a terrible person, like, for no reason.
Yeah. Yeah, she's not a good person.
There are layers of reasons though, because I think specifically in this episode, there was a moment that she was kind of like, she was already being rude to her daughter, and she started kind of putting the Christmas lights up and stuff like that. And it drew like a memory for her that she just couldn't handle. Like, she literally immediately tried to escape. And I feel like Navarro kind of does that as well. Each one of them tries to find means of escapes, but Danvers is a lot more volatile with it. Like, she lashes out, she pushes people away, she pushes her daughter away more than anybody else. And her daughter's her daughter's not being rude about anything. Like, her daughter was like, hey, did you see my game? Like, were you watching? She's like, no. Like, can you move out of the way?
I know. That was so mean. I was like, man.
I was like, your daughter is playing on the hockey team. I don't think I thought I saw guys up there. I'm like, she's a beast. And so it's like, you would think she would, cheer her on, but she couldn't get outside of her own self. And it's like, that's a common thread. Like, if you're a parent and you're dealing with stuff, like, sometimes you don't have anything more to give. And I feel like that's where Danvers is. Unfortunately, she's inherited the responsibility of taking care of this young girl, but she doesn't have it in her to be a good human to anybody. But it's not fair to the girl. it's not fair to the girl. Like they're doing a lot of
Right.
different threads with her trying to account to her people and herself, and her trying to figure out herself and her life, and Danvers just gets in the way. But I don't know, what was your take
Yeah.
on their relationship?
I feel bad. I feel bad for the daughter because it's clear like she had a lot of love for her dad, and she wants like she obviously has a lot of affection for Danvers, but that woman's not built to be a mom or an affectionate person.
Well, not anymore
And
anyway. She may
uh,
have been in the past, but
she may have been, but some obviously there's been losses in her life. I think we got a sneak peek of that memory. Um, and that was like triggered by the polar bear. We kept seeing polar bear motifs and images in this episode. But it would explain a lot. Like she suffered such a huge loss that she's just like shut herself down. I can understand that. But I just feel bad for the daughter. She's clearly seeking out like her community, and I feel like Danvers is so specifically vicious about the native tribes and like their customs because she's so like it's racist. Like it's just so
yeah, it
intense.
is.
Like,
It
girl,
really
relax.
is.
And
It really is.
I can't and I feel like it stems from her not being able to connect to her daughter or her like surrogate or her stepdaughter. I don't know what she is to her. Obviously she's her legal guardian now, but I'm wondering why she's so vicious about it. You know, like was it
Yeah.
obviously the partner that she loved so much was an indigenous person, so I'm wondering if it has something to do with their past. Like maybe they weren't allowed to be together. I don't know. I don't know. Maybe she was a side woman. She seems to be into that. I don't know.
um, yeah, I think that definitely when you talk about losses, it seems as though she had a son with her daughter's dad. That's kind of what I picked from it. And then also she lost the dad. Now I don't know if
Yeah.
like she lost both in the accident. That's the only thing that makes sense to me. That she lost
Yeah.
both of them in the accident. But
Mhm.
there's absolutely this disconnect. But it's weird because at the end of this episode, when she goes to Navarro's house, like I was like, how did she get in that woman's house? She had to have a key. They had to actually have been
Mhm.
tight. Like, there's no way she broke into that woman's house. Like, she probably had a
She
key.
probably broke her
And then
that
she,
one with her. Yeah.
well, but she said, like, you don't keep the cans there anymore. I was like, how often
Oh,
did you go
true.
and visit her?
Were
You know
they
what I'm saying?
familiar? Yeah. Mhm.
Right.
That's
So
true.
it's like
Good point.
they had to have been close partners. And I think what's going to be interesting, they've not shown any flashbacks of them in the past, what their relationship
Right.
was. I think that's going to be
Mhm.
really interesting because I think that's where the disconnect is coming from when it comes from the cultural standpoint. Like even the fact that
Mhm.
like she's allowing her daughter to hang out with what's the name's girlfriend in their home and everything. And so
Mhm.
she's fine with that, but yet she's gonna sit there and disrespect the grandma like that.
In their
Like, dog.
house too. Like that's so. Yeah.
Yeah, she's just
The
being volatile for
audacity.
no reason. Yeah.
Mhm.
But
I agree.
um so moving forward to close this out, we finally get the understanding of what the circle was. They
Mm.
traced it through different means because Danvers had went and interviewed a couple different people. One of the people that worked at I think the laundry area, like it kind of said like, oh, like that looks like witchcraft to me. And then she found the guy that went to
Mhm.
the home and he was like, oh no, this is a tattoo. He had it on his chest. And then Navarro was also talking to somebody that kind of got in that fight and she was like, where did this come from? It's like, oh, well, this was tattooed on this person. And so they all kind of came to a full circle to find out that the guy that was also working in the research facility also had this tattoo. And so when Danvers called the tattoo artist, or was it Navarro or Danvers? I can't remember who called the tattoo artist. Do you remember who it
It
was?
was Danvers. It was
Okay.
Danvers.
She called the tattoo artist, and tattoo artist was like, oh, okay, this is also the model that they based it off of. And then you come to find out it is the same exact person that died that Navarro's been saying disconnected. And then that's how she ended up
Mhm.
at Navarro's house. But kind of what was your take on when they got to the trailer? Everything that went in
Golden
there.
Eagle. Yeah.
What was your take on all that?
The spiral was because we see it at first on that dude's forehead, so that's where like they're like trying to figure out what it was. And so when we get to like when we found out that like she was sleeping with one of the research guys, I was like, okay, that makes things more like interesting. The trailer, when we get inside of it, creeped me out. I was like, this reminds me so much of season one with like all of the Carcosa imagery and like the creepy witch. Like this is we're getting back to like the creepy voodoo witchcraft. Like it literally looks like the inside of it was like an altar, and there was pictures on the one room. They turned on light on in the back room where it was like the bedroom was like there was pictures on the wall, and then there was a giant body, like a voodoo doll body, like the size of an actual person, dressed up in clothes with like and Sam noticed it. I didn't. It was a baby, and I was like, now I'm like, oh my God, was she pregnant? Was Annie pregnant? So now I'm spiraling, pun intended, because because what the like this is getting into cult territory. This is getting into like which like this is crazy. I'm wondering what they were involved in. Now I'm thinking is there a haunting? Is this contaminated water? So now I have a lot of questions.
Yeah. I mean, on the surface, it looks like, he's doing this for retribution of what happened to her and the people that were involved, like he's done this or done that. But then there's still so many inconsistencies about how was he do that? How could he do that alone? It's not possible for him to do it alone. He would need someone else. Nope. So this is where we get to the theories. Now I'm curious your take on, in addition to him, suspect number one, who's your suspect number two? Because I'm gonna tell you my theory. Well, one of them. Initially, we were talking about the other deputy, that he's really shady. I mean, even in this episode, like he legit backhanded his son as soon as he found out that his son, took the files and was like, no, you got a real family. Danvers is not your family. You can't trust her. It was when the son had a conversation with Danvers' daughter, and they started kind of dissecting each other's psychosis, essentially. Like he was talking about like his mother and like how his dad is, like the fact that his dad played music. She was talking about how Danvers like used to dance and used to smile and laugh. But it was something that the son said, and he was like, man, that must feel really, really, really rough to be around something like that. And I think that she has said, like, you grew up okay. Anytime, I don't know any other movie or show, anybody that makes a statement like that and the person doesn't have an emotional reaction in any way, shape, or form, you make them a target subject to me. And so I'm now putting the son in this because the weird thing about it, he's so smart. Like he's smart as a whip. Like he's hanging on everything that Danvers is saying, but he's so close to this. Like he's really close. Everything that's kind of happening has transpired. Like he to me gives me the case that take care of the situation by any means necessary. That's the vibe that I get from him as a son. And I'm now thinking that if anybody was in league with the guy with the spiral on his chest, is him. He has the means and the resources to be able to cover stuff up. And on top of that, like he's dealing with like a lot of darkness all around him. And he's subject to abuse. He doesn't like injustice, and he wants to make people proud of him. He wants to be the hero. And anybody that's got a hero complex like that, I don't know. I'm putting him on the slab. I initially thought the dad was up there, but this episode made me gun for the son, unfortunately.
That's an interesting theory. I was gonna say I actually thought his reactions in that whole scene, like him when his dad hit him and then when he was talking to the daughter, I thought he was just weirdly flat. Like he didn't have much emotion. Like he disassociated, So I was like, this is interesting. Like, well, obviously we'll learn a little bit more about him, but that's an interesting theory. And I do still think that somehow his dad was involved in trying to cover up her murder, and that's why the vigilante justice of her boyfriend is happening. Like all the theatrics, and it's possible like there's some supernatural aspects where he's like hearing voices and like she's telling him like you have to avenge me, and maybe this cop son was involved. Who knows? I think that a lot more people than I think a lot of people in town know more than they let on. Like we already found out in this episode alone, like people were lying off their asses. I swear, even down to the lady that had the bruise on her face, the people in the bar, everyone knows a piece of something of what happened to her. I just know it. So I feel like that's my theory, is that something happened to her and everyone covered it up because they knew something would happen to the mines. Like I feel like it was something had something to do with the mines. They didn't want to. If they found out that she died in the mines or something like that, the mines were shut down. They said in the last episode or this episode, the mines. If there are no mines, there are no schools, there are no hospitals, there are no jobs, there are nothing. So if the mines go down, I just feel like I think there are a lot of people involved in her death. A lot of people.
Yeah, it's really interesting, and I mean I think the thing about True Detective, one thing that they've never had is one of the detectives be really truly involved in understanding. I was going to ask you a question. It may be completely untrue. Do you think Danvers knows the whole truth? Like because the reason why I asked that question is because every single time the son keeps asking, these weird questions about Navarro, like why aren't you bringing Navarro in? What happened to you and Navarro? And she keeps taking it as, oh, well, you're going to be kicked off. Like, no, it's so specific. Every single question surrounding the case that Navarro is trying to do. And she keeps on deflecting. And so Danvers is really smart. So, but you don't think that she knows everything about what happened?
I think she's trying to protect Navarro from whatever. Like people were like, oh, she tried to go after this lady, like Annie McClintock or whatever, some lady. And I think was that the ice rink lady that had issues or whatever.
Yeah,
I think but like basically like Navarro was bombing the wrong people, like the upper crust of the town, and so I feel like she was holding her back as much as she could because she didn't want her to get people riled up again. I think she was protecting her, in my opinion.
Okay. Yeah, that's what I've been thinking for a
and
while.
That's why
it's just
I don't
know. I'm just not trusting anybody at this point.
No, and we shouldn't, because they're all untrustworthy.
That's hilarious. But yeah, did we unpack everything? Is that everything?
I think so. Oh, the body is melting, and they discovered that Clark's body is not amongst them.
Yep.
So that's basically why we're saying he might be the killer, because his body is missing. So technically, he's not a body; he's a missing person.
Yep. And then we went back and looked at the first episode again, and after everything transpired, and when the guy came to go and visit, somebody was rolling around the halls. And so initially it was kind of just freaking us out, but now it's like that seemed like one person rolling around could have been him.
Yeah. And he had a jacket on that we found in the first episode. Like I realized that, like I didn't realize he was wearing her jacket, the pink jacket. That was like that made the connection between the two of them in the first place.
Right. Yeah. I forgot about that.
So, the show.
Yeah, it's good. It's really good. So yeah, let's go ahead and work on our conclusions and then find a grade for this episode. So what are your final thoughts, and what was your grade from A to F?
My final thoughts are I am even more intrigued. I love all the creepiness. And my grade, I think I'm gonna give it excuse me. I'm gonna give it an A-. Don't laugh at my sneeze.
I wasn't laughing at the sneeze. It was the timing. It was kind of like.
I'll give it an A- because it's still excellent. But
yeah.
What did I
I am freaked out by the show. More and more. I think it's like the more creeped out I get, the more intrigued I get. and also the more analytical I get. Like I'm like trying to piece together stuff. The only way that I can piece together stuff is not to trust anybody. So I'm having to look at stuff in different angles every single moment, while also enjoying the entertaining side of the supernatural way of they're doing storytelling. But yeah, I was either A- or a B+ for me too. I think the first episode was near perfect. This is
I agree.
really good, but the first episode is definitely better. But it's not to say this isn't a great episode. It's just it continues the story and it keeps the pace really well. And not just that, man. Like this is a beautiful show, and the way we're looking at it, we're not even looking at something with full VFX even completed. Like this looks amazing.
It's stunning.
Shout out to HBO. I mean, they won me over with The Last of Us last year, so here we go again.
Yeah.
But yeah, this is where I'm at. But yeah, until next time, ladies and gentlemen, we will be back. But before we leave, Vanessa, where can everybody find your content?
You can find me at Vanessa Shark on everything. Don't laugh at me. Instagram, Twitter, whatever, all the stuff. I have a website, vanessashark.com. And I also write for Multiverse of Color. If you're into comic book stuff, that's my bag. Okay, thank you. I'm the most awkward person alive.
I don't know, debatable. I'm really awkward. But anyway, we're gonna go. Make sure you like, subscribe, hit the bell button, go and check out her content as well. And then again, remember on the 3rd episode, Jorge, hopefully and prayerfully, will be back, and we will go and dissect this whole entire thing. Peace, everybody.
Falling out the top of I can see the skyline, 50 mile radius on my time.